Well, hello there, Algebra 2 students. This is Mr. Hotard here. Today we are continuing our journey on factoring. We're going to be solving quadratic equations by factoring. Now, I know some of you are thinking, oh my gosh, I'm just now starting to figure out regular factoring. Now he's making it harder? And the answer is yes, but only by one extra step. In order to solve quadratic equations by factoring, there's a property that we need. It's called the zero product property. Now you know what zero is. That's what some of y'all make on your quizzes. But product, all right, what's product mean in math? It means multiply. Okay, so zero product property says if you have two things, A and B, whatever they are, if A times B equals 0, then what do we know about at least one of those two things? At least one of them has to equal 0. If A times B equals 0, then that means either A equals 0 or B equals 0. Okay. So what does that have to do with factoring? Well, we can use that property to actually take it one extra step and come up with the answer to the problem. So if you look down here, solving these by factoring, r squared minus 5r plus 6 equals 0. Now I want to actually figure out what x is or what r is. So for now, for this first step, just ignore that equals 0. And let's just factor this just like we've been doing every problem. All right, I'm going to find two numbers that multiply to give me positive 6 and add to give me negative 5. So I know that's going to be 2 and 3, but they have to multiply to give me a positive and add to give me a negative. So does that mean two negatives or a positive and a negative? It means two negatives. So I could factor that into r minus 3 and r minus 2. Because these numbers multiply to give me positive 6, they add to give me negative 5. Now, that's the factors. To actually solve that, I know this is equal to 0. This is where the zero product property comes in. This thing times this thing is equal to 0. That means at least one of these things has to be 0. That doesn't mean the answer is r equals 0. That means the answers are whatever would give you 0 inside each of the factors, inside each of the parentheses. What number minus 3 equals 0? 3. 3 minus 3 equals 0. So I get r equals 3 as one answer. And what number minus 2 gives you 0? 2. R equals positive 2. So basically, zero product property, when you use that, the answers to the problem are basically the same as the factors, just opposite signs. If you have r minus 3, then the answer would be r equals positive 3. If you have r minus 2, the answer would be r equals positive 2. Those are the solutions. So just don't get those mixed up. These are the factors. These are the solutions to the equation. And they work. If you plug them back in, if you plug in 3 for r, 3 squared minus 5 times 3 plus 6, that will give you 0. Same thing if you plug in 2. Now, next problem. P squared plus 8p equals 0. Again, ignore that equals 0. We're just going to factor this. Now, remember, what's the first step when you're factoring? Greatest common factor. There's something that both of these terms have. A p. I've got a GCF of p, so let's take that out first. P, parentheses. Now, what's left when I divide p out of everything here? P squared divided by p is just p, plus what's 8p divided by p? That's just 8. And we have equal to 0. So there's nothing left to factor. There's no more p squared. I'm ready to get my answers. So again, this times this equals 0. That means this thing right here has to equal 0, and there's no plus or minus. So that means anytime you have a variable by itself out here with no plus or minus behind it, that automatically means p equals 0 is one answer. And then the other one, what number plus 8 equals 0? Negative 8. P equals negative 8. So p equals 0, p equals negative 8. 3 more quick problems. All right, next one. This one is not equal to 0. You notice it's equal to negative 2. There is no negative 2 product property. So before we factor anything, what do you think a good first step is here? Add 2. Get it equal to 0. In fact, I want you to write yourself a little note. All right, before you do anything else, set it equal to 0 first. All these problems, when you're solving by factoring, the first thing you do before you factor a thing, before you look for GCF or anything like that, make sure the problem's equal to 0. If it doesn't equal 0, make it equal 0. So here, number 4, I'm going to add 2. And make sure you combine the like terms. Don't add it with a negative 6 here. Add it with a negative 9. So that's going to be r squared minus 6r. That's going to be minus 7 equal to 0. Now I'm ready to factor. Ignore that equals 0. Factor this. I need numbers that multiply to give me negative 7, add to give me negative 6. So what are the only numbers that multiply to give you 7? 1 and 7. All right, one of them's got to be a negative. The bigger one has to be negative to add to give me negative 6. So that means I can factor this into r minus 7 and r plus 1. Does that mean the answers are r equals negative 7 and r equals positive 1? No, it's the opposite of that. R equals positive 7, R equals negative 1. These are the solutions to that equation. All right, 2 more problems, almost done. Number 5, all right, again, I don't want to factor anything yet. What do you think I should do first? Set it equal to 0 first. So let's move this 9n over to this side. Let's subtract 9n. Now, where do you think I should put it? I should put it right in the middle. There are no like terms. Don't try to combine it with 2n squared. All right, I want it to say n squared, then n, and then the number by itself. So I'm going to rewrite this as 2n squared minus 9n plus 9 equal to 0. Got it equal to 0. Now, is there a greatest common factor here? No, there is not. So remember, what can we do if I have a number in front of n squared or x squared and I can't use GCF? This is one where you could use the rainbow method or the guess and check method. Rainbow method is quicker. So 2 times 9, that's 18. So now, when I'm factoring this, I'm going to find 2 numbers that multiply to give me positive 18 and add to give me negative 9. All right, that's going to be 6 and 3. Should that be 2 negatives, 2 positives, or 1 negative, 1 positive? It's got to multiply to give me positive, but add to give me negative. So that means 2 negatives. I'm going to factor that into n minus 6 and n minus 3. But hold on, we're not done. Don't say, okay, that means the answers are 6 and 3. No, it doesn't. Remember, rainbow method, there's one last step. You have to go back and do what with these numbers? Divide by that number in front of n squared. All right, divide these by 2. So that's going to become n minus 3. And I can't divide that, so I can rewrite this as 2n minus 3. These are my factors. Now I'm ready to get the answers. So that means I have n minus 3, so that means n equals positive 3 is one of the answers. Now this one's going to be a fraction, all right, because 2n, since there's a number in front, I'm just going to write this on the side. I need to figure out what n has to equal if 2n minus 3 equals 0. How do you get n by itself in this little equation? You add 3, so 2n equals 3, and then you divide by 2. So n equals 3 halves. Now, what do you notice if you're using the rainbow method to factor it? What do you notice about that fraction you get for the answer and the fraction you get when you're working it out? It's the same fraction, it's just the opposite sign. So really, once you get to this point, you know what this answer is going to be. It's n minus 3 halves, n equals positive 3 halves is the answer. One last problem. Okay, this one, there's actually more than one way of solving this. There's another way we'll learn later called the square root method. But for now, we're sticking with factoring. Get it equal to 0. Subtract 23. And I can combine that with the 7. So I have 49x squared. That's going to be minus 16 equal to 0. So next, is there a greatest common factor? No, there is not. Now, how do you factor something like this? We have a number in front of x squared, so yes, we could use that rainbow method, but that'd be really hard because you'd be multiplying 49 times negative 16 and then trying to work with that. This is a difference of perfect squares. All right, if you recall from your notes from last week, difference of 2 squares, that middle term is 0. You're just looking for numbers that multiply to give you that back number, add to give you 0 for the middle term. All right, and if you have a number in front of the x squared, you're just looking for basically what times what gives you that. So in this case, what numbers multiply to give me negative 16 and then cancel out to give me 0? Plus 4 and minus 4. But instead of just having x's, what x times what x would give me 49x squared? Be 7's, 7x and 7x. So I can factor this into 7x plus 4, 7x minus 4, equal to 0. And so now I'm ready to get my answers just like this problem. All right, how I had 2n minus 3 equal to 0. I solved it, I added 3, I divided by 2. So we're going to do the same thing here. For this first factor, get this on the screen. For this first factor, 7x plus 4 equals 0. I would subtract 4, and then I divide by 7, means x equals what over what? It'd be negative 4 over 7. And for the second equation, if I add 4, and then I divide by 7, what's that answer going to say? X equals positive 4 over 7. Right, so basically your answers are going to be fractions if you wind up with a number in front of the x in your factors. All right, your answer will just be the opposite of that number over whatever number's in front of x, if that helps you out. So again, get it equal to 0, then factor it. Look for GCF, and then use whatever factoring method is appropriate for that problem, and then your last step, change the signs to get the solutions. Good luck!